Kia ora koutou. I really love the visual that we've been building of the future consumer. We've heard that they're going to have extraordinarily high expectations, that they will reject anything that doesn't meet those expectations abruptly, that they do like a good story, but that, sorry, I was just distracted because I'm hoping my slides are going to show up, that they won't accept stories. They don't actually trust what businesses are telling them. They need hard evidence. And I think the best way to visualize this, which is why I was, here we go, is a international wine connoisseur blended with a fussy toddler. What does that mean for the environment? The future consumer is going to reject anything that doesn't meet their environmental expectations. Consumers don't just want sustainability in the future, they expect it. How do we know? Because many of those future consumers are already here today. This year's surveys are showing that more than 50% of New Zealanders will reject products on environmental grounds, and 75% will change products, again, on environmental grounds. And that is going up every year, even in the current political and economic construct. And it's not just the future consumer. It's also future markets, or actually I've crossed out future, because current markets require exceptional evidence of environmental performance. From September this year, so yes, future, but very soon, you cannot even call a product sustainable without very strong credentials behind that in Europe. In the US, food environmental certifications are going to grow from 10% of the total current revenue on food certifications to 20% share by 2035. It's rapidly increasing. Now, I really appreciate that you haven't all audibly groaned at this idea of more requirements for credentials, because I know that audit fatigue is real. It is here now. There are so many growers and packers and producers who already are feeling that they're at administrative breaking point trying to meet the vast array of credentials that they have to satisfy in the various markets that they sell to. But I want to reassure you that sustainability and environmental excellence is not just a regulatory requirement, it's a huge commercial opportunity. Already today, before we're looking into the future, studies on consumer expectations say that environmental performance is a key driver in decision making for more than 70% of consumers, and those younger consumers that are coming through, it's more like 90% already today. And there is a price premium as well. Many groups of consumers, certainly not all, will pay a price premium. Most of the studies put it around 10%. Now, I know that a lot of you are instantly thinking, yeah, they say they will, but they don't. The say-do gap, right? How many people have heard of the say-do gap? There is a say-do gap. There's no question about it. Do you know that the eco-labelling market is $3 billion US, and it's set to meet, to hit $6 billion within less than 10 years, so doubling in less than 10 years. And I agree that actually consumers, while they say they want to buy sustainable products, they are not doing that today. But the say-do gap is not the same as most people think. It is a different driver than you'd expect. So I want to do a bit of a social experiment. I'll give you a moment to look at these 2 cans of tomato soup. You must buy a can of tomato soup today, so everyone has to put up their hand. How many people are going to choose tomato soup A? How many people are going to choose tomato soup B? Yeah, me too, right? If it was everything else equal, price, quality, everything else, I don't think there is anybody, perhaps a couple of psychopaths out there, but pretty much nobody who is going to choose tomato soup A, right? But now I want you to think about the last time you were faced with an actual decision and trying to buy an environmentally friendly product. It didn't look like this, right? It looked more like this. You were just bombarded by sustainability claims, and you might have spent a moment thinking, oh, am I going to buy the locally produced or the organic, the low carbon or the recycled packaging? And then you probably just went with your gut. That is not because you say you want environmental and then it turns out you don't care, that is a say can't gap. You cannot choose environmental products in today's market. And the reason is that environmental eco-labels like these were never designed to help you make a decision. I think people think that they were. You know, they go out and they're looking at it and how am I going to choose? They are marketing tools to tell you the environmental credentials of that product. They were not designed to help you make decisions. They are like health claims on products. You know, we have the health claims. This is fat-free, it's full of sugar. This is sugar-free, it's full of fat. Hey, healthy heart. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds pretty good, so maybe I'll buy it. Using eco-labels to differentiate environmental performance between products is genuinely like trying to compare apples with oranges. But what's really interesting about that say-do gap is some people are managing to get cut through and bridge the gap. A really good example is Mike Casey with his electric cherries. So he tested this in market. He didn't test what people were going to say, he tested what people would do. And he sold fossil fuel-free cherries. Now, fossil fuel-free is a claim that fussy, wine-loving toddler can get in behind. They know fossil fuels are bad, they know fossil fuel-free is good, and so they were willing to pay a premium. He tested a whole lot of different prices and he got a 15% premium, $3 extra per box of cherries. That knowledge that you can get cut through and you can get environmental premiums on products is creating a rise of impact labelling. No more eco-labelling, impact labelling, where people are disclosing the impacts of their products on pack. You can see Oatly actually put their carbon footprint. You might have seen an uprise of zero carbon claims. If you look closely, the brands that are doing that well, you can also see the carbon footprint. So if you pick up the Silver Fern Farms packet, it does say net zero by nature. It also says 29 grams of CO2 per, and I actually can't read that label down there, but per unit of beef. And so it's that transparency that is getting cut through. Carbon labelling is really useful because it's measurable and you can distinguish between different things. I can see that 100 grams of chocolate is going to cost me a lot less carbon than driving my car 10 kilometres. The problem is we're getting really good at carbon and we're missing some of the other really important considerations. Carbon tunnel vision, where we're making all these decisions without thinking about biodiversity, eutrophication, deforestation, and so on. Do consumers care the most about carbon? Actually, no, they don't. In New Zealand, it's 5th on their level of priorities around environmental concerns, behind pollution, microplastics, extreme weather events, and loss of biodiversity. Climate change is also not our only mission-critical challenge from an environmental perspective. I'm really interested to know how many people in the room have seen the Planetary Boundaries Framework before. Can I get a show of hands? It's a really interesting thing because the Planetary Boundaries Framework is a little bit like the 1.5 degrees for nature. It sets out which environmental systems are mission-critical and what the level of, what the safe level for humankind is. So the safe level is shown in green, and the wedges show where we are performing on that. And you can see that climate change, we're over the limit, but we're also over the limit for many other critical systems. The novel entities, how much synthetic material we're putting into the environment, for nitrogen and phosphorus flows into waterways, for deforestation of indigenous forests, for biodiversity loss. But what's really interesting to me in a room full of people that work in export markets is actually that science sits behind just about every regulatory requirement that is coming down international supply chains at us. It sits behind nature-related financial disclosures. It sits behind science-based targets for nature. In the UK, the IGD is the collective of all the UK supermarkets. They're proposing planetary boundaries labelling in all of the supermarkets. The EU product environmental footprint, PEF labels, which are coming out, are based on the planetary boundaries. So every New Zealand producer should know not only what the planetary boundaries are, but how their products perform against these. Otherwise, it is a massive market and regulatory risk. The problem is, as soon as we start measuring environmental performance beyond carbon, it gets really tricky. This is a real table of data about the environmental performance of avocados, and you can see each line is a different region of avocados. But if you start to look closely, Some regions have a higher carbon footprint and a lower water footprint, or a lower water footprint and a higher carbon footprint, and you're suddenly like, how am I supposed to make that decision? If we look back at that chocolate in that car, the chocolate was really winning on the carbon footprint, but man, what about the deforestation footprint? Who reckons that chocolate is the best performing product on the screen right now? Who thinks that the driving 10 kilometres is the best? Who has no idea? Yeah, it's really tricky, right? So I've been working in sustainability for a really long time, and I used to look at tables like the one about the avocados and think, man, why can't I understand this data? I don't get it. And then I started asking all these senior people, and then I was like, man, nobody can interpret these tables. Why are we even calculating them? Because it's not creating useful evidence for decision making. And so I left my job and I started to look at how could you take that data and turn it into something meaningful, do a different way of measuring environmental performance. The outcome of that was something called planetary accounting. It's a little bit like, it's actually a lot like carbon accounting, but it looks across that whole perspective of planetary boundaries so that you can understand the performance of a product, a business, a service on the planetary boundaries, on nature. If we go back to the health space for a minute, in the 60s, when it became really popular to put health claims on products, you could have called that health washing, like we talk about greenwashing now, but they found a solution. Nutrition facts were introduced to disrupt health washing. If you wanted to make a health claim on pack, you had to put the nutrition facts on there too. Nutrition facts are clever because they are telling you a lot of different data points. You know, they're telling you the fat and the calories and the protein and the sodium, like we can look at the carbon and the nitrogen and the phosphorus and the waste, but they do it in a way that you can make sense of the data. They don't just say, hey, there's 8 grams of fat in this product. They say 8 grams of fat is 12% of a recommended daily intake. So you can see if 8 grams of fat is big or it's small. And so with planetary accounting, we said, hey, well, why don't we do that for the planet's health? Nutrition facts meets planetary boundaries naturally equals planetary facts. But actually most consumers don't like those tables of data, so we went out and did a whole lot of co-design with real people to come up with planetary facts that you can interpret visually. So this is what it looks like, essentially a nutrition facts graph. The dotted line is the daily limit for one person, so you can fill up that circle once a day and be within a fair share of the planetary boundaries. The footprint of the product showing carbon, you can see it's red there, that means it exceeds a day's limit. Orange says that there's impact, but it's lower than the day. But we can also quantify regen ag. So if you're making a positive impact on the environment, it's green, and the bigger the green wedge, the better. And then at the bottom, it tells you how much of your planetary budget you've used up with that product that day. So in this case, 27% of my budget is used up. It's neat because actually you can compare apples with oranges. And if you're struggling to see, apples won. But actually it also tells you what good looks like because you can barely see that little bit of yellow in the middle of the circle. Apples and oranges are both good. If you're eating New Zealand produced produce in New Zealand, then don't sweat it. It doesn't matter which. The first planetary facts hit the public domain with a brand in 2024. Raglan put theirs out, and what's really neat is you can see the whole supply chain in that data. If you look closely, the vanilla yogurt, you can see the vanilla in the results. It is a higher footprint than the blueberry or the Greek yogurt. I had someone say to me it's like Google Translate for nature, and I really like it, so I keep telling people that so it catches on. But that's that same avocado table, that's the results. So you can see what the data looks like. It highlights the risks that you can't see in your supply chain. So if you're just measuring the carbon footprint of your chickens, you wouldn't see that this one chicken has a huge deforestation footprint. The only difference between these two chickens is what the chickens are eating. And I am sure that the farmers that are producing these two chickens would have had no idea that they had that risk in their supply chain. But that commercial opportunity, you can compare any product at a glance, and if you look at this page carefully, that top line, that's the Hort NZ opportunity. We have just assessed about 50 New Zealand foods, and there is not anything Hort NZ that comes up as a big impact. It is little yellow footprints. It is the credentials that we need to show the world that we have the environmental excellence and leadership. Planetary facts are also flexible, so you don't just have to show the impact per serve, you can show the impact per nutrition and all of a sudden answer that nutrition versus sustainability nexus. Is that better per serve? Is it better per unit of calcium, of protein, of vitamin C? And in behind each label, it is a really powerful decision-making tool. You can see exactly where the impacts occur on the orchard, through your supply chain, through the distribution channels that you have. The Planetary Accounting Network is a not-for-profit, and we exist to make the environmental costs of things visible to consumers, but also visible to growers, to businesses, so that they can make decisions so that we can all work together to go back to within that safe operating space of the planetary boundaries. Planetary accounting doesn't just work at a product scale. You can look at a whole business, you can look at a whole sector. We've just done the water sector, for example, but you could look at the horticulture sector, New Zealand's food sector as a whole, a region, a nation, and so on. It doesn't add to that audit fatigue, it simplifies it. It doesn't sit in that death by framework space. It is a measurement framework that you can use under any of those umbrella frameworks. So it can give you points under B Corp, it can help you with Future Fit, it can give you the data you need for your nature-related financial disclosures, and you can use the same data to get your PEF scores. We're a network organisation, so if your brand is not already there, I'd love you to join us on this mission to make environmental costs visible, because the environmental costs of horticulture are low. And I'm pretty excited to share that we've just released a free-to-use dashboard, so you can just go to planetaryfacts.com if you don't want to scan the QR code, and you can actually look up the environmental costs of a whole bunch of different horticulture products. Silver Fern Farms lamb and beef just got dropped in today. We've got different branded products dropping in every Tuesday. And if you've been itching to know the answer to the car versus chocolate question, the driving wins. So it's really important that we look beyond carbon and see that whole perspective. Thank you very much.